The gas price sign used to be the most important way to communicate with customers who were driving along. Track them with a gas price, maybe get them inside. That's the way it had traditionally worked at convenience stores that sell fuel. There are other options, and we're going to talk about what today's options can mean for you in growing your business. Joining us today is Fred Dimesa. He is Head of Mobility Intelligence and Advertising Product Lines at Arity. And let's talk a little bit about what some of these ways to communicate your brand to drivers using all kinds of data, what that looks like today. Can you just give us a lay of the land, Fred? What are the opportunities today?
Thanks, Jeff. Where Arity is a company that specializes in mobility data and insights. We are born out of an analytics environment. We had originally actually started looking at mobility data for insurance purposes. And then we quickly realized that it's like there's a lot more value that you can get out of mobility data. And I'm using that word specifically, mobility data versus location data. Right? In the past, I think for a lot of retailers, they use location data. There was all this geofencing and beacon technology out there. Where if someone walked into a store, you could harass them on their cell phone right as they walked in, and give them some offer for something they may or may not have wanted, they may or may not have already wanted to buy, and that was kind of the extent of location technology. All that data was kind of collected in these really weird ways. It's like signals off of a bid stream. A bid stream, for those who don't live in advertising, is these are ad calls that come in, and there's a location identified in that bid stream. And that may be a VPN, it could be a false address, it could be all kinds of things. People were also mixing in signals from cell towers and making assumptions that, well, I saw this person at the cell tower 15 minutes ago and this cell tower 15 minutes later. They must have gone by these 5 stores in between. And what Arity's done is we've actually collected a very large data set. It's about 2 trillion miles of driving data since I joined. I joined late 2016. We had about 1 billion miles of driving data, and now we have about 2 trillion. We process about 1,500 trips every second. So it's a massive amount of data, and it's more complete than any other data set that we've ever seen that made available. And what that does is it gives retailers, specifically C-stores, gas stations, quick serve restaurants, it gives them insights into how people move throughout the world, right? What roads are they on? What stores are they going by? What stores are they stopping at? Where were they coming from right before they got to your store? Now, where do they live? We know that too, and that's always helpful when you're building a fun heat map. But the question is, what were they doing right before they went to your store? Right? Were they at work and you're the stop that they always make on the way home from work? Are they on a trip and they've never been to your store before, and they probably are never going by your store again? Right? You need to know those kinds of things so you can do planning, right? So just very fundamental things like, is traffic going up in my area, but my store sales are flat or down? Right? Why is that? That tells you there's a problem with your store, right? That maybe we need to work on to get people to actually stop in. We also do things like, so we can give you those insights, but then we can allow you to activate against those insights. And the way you do that is you actually come through the Arity platform, and you can set up marketing campaigns. The data is one part of a marketing campaign. I think where people make mistakes is they get very focused on an ad format, or they get focused on the data itself, and they forget about the creative. They forget about the timing. They forget about kind of a strategy overall. And that's really, I think, where the opportunity lies today.
So when we think about the opportunity to connect via mobile people, you think about cell phones and you think about cars. How can those be segmented out? Because if, say, there's multiple people driving the same car, do you link that back to a phone so that you have a persona? Or do they think if I'm driving my wife's car that her behavior has also all of a sudden become mine. How do you cut through all that clutter so that you're reaching the right people the right way?
Yeah, so the data is actually tied at an individual level, right? So, and from a retailer's perspective, what they care about is where is the individual, not necessarily where you're driving. Whereas our insurance customers absolutely care about, are you driving or not, right? And we do have some proprietary algorithms that can detect driver or passenger. It can detect, are you on a train, are you on a bus, as you're moving through the world. We have a variety of data sources. Mobile is obviously the largest source of data. We have some OEM data. It's all used differently depending on the use cases. But at the end of the day, it's really about what individuals are passing by your store, are stopping at your store. When you look at loyalty, is this person, whether they were driving in a carpool one day or driving by themselves the next day, are they stopping at your store? Right? Are they stopping at competitor stores? When you launch a loyalty program, 7-Eleven's got a really great loyalty program. But the question with that is, are they just giving away money or are they actually driving loyalty? And where our data comes in is we can tell you, yeah, sure, that person downloaded the 7-Eleven app as an example, but did that actually increase their visits to 7-Eleven? Right? It may have increased spend while they're at 7-Eleven, but did you really get a share of that person's time? Right? And that's what we measure. We're not measuring dollars, we're not measuring things like that. We're measuring share of time, right? How much did you actually spend? How much of your time did you spend at a store versus a competitor store versus, this is, a one-off for you.
And, the adage 100 years ago in advertising was 50% of advertising's effective. The problem is you don't know which 50%'s effective. And that's because advertising was, and still can be, very passive. You read something, you watch something, you hear something. There's no action involved, or engagement involved. So once you have that engagement where you are hit with some message and you take an action, then you can say, oh, by the way, this is working. This is not that 50% we don't know if it's working or not.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. I think the nice part about what we're doing is not only are we offering the ability to deliver the messages, but we offer the ability to measure their effectiveness, right? Are you really getting what you're looking for? And sometimes that's just engagement, right? Sometimes all you care about is, did I actually drive an app open? Sometimes you care, did I drive the person into the store, right? It depends on what your objective is. I mean, you look at the Super Bowl ads, right? Those Super Bowl ads this year, every year, they're not designed to drive you into stores. Dunkin' Donuts spent all that money on their campaign, and the job there wasn't to drive you into the store. It was to build brand awareness, kind of lean into their Northeast heritage quite a bit. The question is, could you do more, right? And with someone like Arity, we can actually help you do more, right? What if I actually tied you while you're watching the Super Bowl, they're running this national spot? What if I could actually tie in local Dunkin' Donuts stores nearby, right? That you can order from, right, online, or that you can go visit. That would be interesting, right? It's like taking something that traditionally has been the purview of pure brand, pure upper funnel advertising, and really making it much more localized and really much more actionable. And that, that's the nice part about, you can't do that with linear very well. You can absolutely do that with CTV because we know where that TV is sitting. And then I can overlay Arity data to that and go, oh, okay, well, this person is a person who stops at donut shops or stops at Dunkin', or is driving by a Dunkin' and has never stopped before in their life. Give them some messaging, letting them know, hey, along the way to your work, here's a Dunkin' thing. The other thing we help with is timing, right? It's like, again, the location data world was all about geofencing and things like that. It's like serving you an ad once you walked into a store or when you went by. But at that point, you're not actually looking at a phone. You're not looking at a device that's serving an ad. And if you are, you're doing it wrong. You shouldn't be looking at your phone while you're driving, right? And
Right.
your phone may be in your pocket when you're walking into the store. Doesn't do you any good to serve an ad then. Where it would be great to serve an ad is right before you got into the car, right? Or an hour before, 2 hours before. The moment you get into the car, right? That's the time when you can push a message to the consumer, because what Arity gets out of data is we get patterns, right? So I know if you're a 9 to 5 Monday through Friday worker, which are rarer these days, you're going to get in the car at a certain window. So if you have the 7-Eleven or Starbucks app or the Dunkin' app, Dunkin' or 7-Eleven can pop a message up right to you right before you got in the car, because they know your commute times, your commute time window. You could actually use that data to buy podcast time, right? It's like, because what do people do in the car? They listen to podcasts, they listen to Sirius XM, right? We can actually help you build audiences to target that, right? I think the important thing here is what Arity's doing is we're building these insights and we're allowing you to activate against the insights. But what we're not doing is giving you data on individuals, right? We're not telling you this is what Jeff does every day. What we're doing is we're saying Jeff falls into this category of user, and Jeff is interesting to you. And to us, he's a number. He's just like, this set of digits, and we can target a message to Jeff without knowing who Jeff is or anything about Jeff personally. It's about your patterns and targeting patterns. And then we can measure, did it actually have an impact?
Well, depending upon the day, being called a number is not necessarily the worst thing that happens to me. So, that might not be a bad thing. Now, I got some other things to talk about. But since you mentioned the Super Bowl, and that's, I think, fairly top of mind with people because it just happened a couple of days ago. I was at a Super Bowl party, and the general consensus is the ads weren't that good. I'm not asking you to comment on what you thought of the ads or any expertise around that, but take us a little bit. You did that with Dunkin' behind the curtain when you have a big event, whether it's a Super Bowl. It's how do you tie all these elements together? Like, for instance, at the Super Bowl, there was a Pizza Hut or Domino's or one of those commercials. And I'm sure they knew exactly the minute it was going to run in every market in every time zone. And they probably had some playbook together. Dunkin', same type of thing. There was probably something, was somebody going to buy a coffee at 5:42 or whenever the commercial ran? I don't know. But what is if commercials are seen as not as exciting for 30 seconds, there's probably a lot going on behind the scenes that the commercial is part of a much broader strategy that customers may not see very apparently.
Yeah, I think, Super Bowl in particular, obviously it's actually not necessarily about driving action right then and there. I mean, I think some of the Uber Eats and Instacart commercials are, which they're actually pretty clever in a lot of the cases, and they tie in. There was some stuff a year ago where one of them was doing actual tie-ins to local businesses, right, where they're telling you, order now, right, from here, right, and recommending businesses, which is part of their ad program. But the reality is the point of the Super Bowl is to kind of make a big announcement, right, and that's it. There aren't that many opportunities left in the world where you can gather that margin audience all at once, where everyone's watching all at once. So you're making that big announcement, but the key is repetition, right? And personalization as you go, as you do that repetition. So you may not use that initial commercial as a way to drive action, but then what you do is you repeat throughout the quarter or the year, depending on how successful it is. I mean, you see some things like in the insurance world where certain characters have lived on for years, right? We all even remember the Verizon commercial. Can you hear me now?
Right.
It's like that guy did really well. He was on for years. You remember the commercial, And then you take those opportunities to tie them into local activations. That's really how people think about it. It's not about so much the large, massive audience. And frankly, for most local retail, they don't care about the large, massive audience. It doesn't.
Right.
If I'm sitting in Seattle where I am and I see an ad for a rallies in Los Angeles, it's like, I don't care. There's none near me, right? Why are you even advertising to me? And so again, what Arity gives the opportunity to do is personalize that. I can, be as simple as identifying local nearby locations. I can also help you not buy that space, right? Differentiate. If you're a portfolio like Yum, maybe Yum doesn't have all their brands up in Seattle. They only have some of their brands in Seattle, so they can actually tailor the buy based on location data, based on knowing where I am and what I do and where I go buy. So I think that's really kind of the way to think about it. Some people are going to be better at that than others. Some people, frankly, don't care, right? There are brand folks out there who are like, I just want my brand to go everywhere. I don't care. I just want as many eyeballs on it, and I want to win awards, right? And that's usually what people are doing in the Super Bowl. I mean, you're spending $7 million for 30 seconds, not including all your production costs. That is a lot of money. The goal is to just kind of make people remember you. I think, it's a little bit of a challenge. I mean, I sit and I watch these commercials and I struggle to remember which one was Instacart, which one was Uber Eats. I don't, it's like they start to blur in my mind. I was actually trying to remember who was doing the NFL is trying to sell food ad, right? Is it Uber Eats or was it DoorDash? I can't remember. Turns out it's Uber Eats, but I had to look it up, right? It's like, it just starts to blur together. So those local activations become much more important because you can tie it all together.
Yeah, and I think we're all the same way. It's like you can watch a commercial and it's like, wow, that's great. And then you think about it and it's like, but what do they sell? And and if you think of the competitor, you've probably done something even worse. And you see that sometimes with car commercials, with insurance, and the examples you cited. I thought with the Dunkin' commercial, it was clever that they also took a swipe at somebody that they think of as competitors because they had a bunch of people wearing different colors. And I think one of the lines was, and you misspelled my name or mispronounced my name or something. So it's a cheap little thing there that might been a jab that stuck a little bit. Yeah. But you got from that commercial, whether or not it was well done or not, you got what they were trying to do. And from that standpoint, whether it wins the awards or not, it's effective.
Right.
What do people do? And setting aside, the first meeting with you, but if they're going to talk about getting into the digital space and talking to people on the go, I think you had mentioned one thing that's a critical mistake. You need to have a strategic vision on what you want to do, but what is one or two things that anybody that's in your space tries to steer people away from because they're not as effective? So how do you align thinking that best gets people the actions that they want to see?
Yeah, I think it's, the key is spend a little bit of time talking about what your objectives are with, the company you're working with, right? What is it you're trying to achieve? Because a lot of time what people do is like, I have a product to sell and I'm going to sell you this product no matter what your objectives are. And that's the nature of what salespeople do, right? I'm glad I'm not one of them. Their job is to sell the product. The marketer's job is to deliver against a strategy and figure out, is what this person selling me going to fit that strategy? So I think the mistake a lot of people make is they don't spend the time to collaborate with, their reps or the companies they're working with. They really say, this is what I want to achieve. Here's how I'm going to measure success. And if you do that up front, people can be much more responsive, right? We can, as a product person, we can build solutions, right? We can build insights that are slightly different than what maybe we have off the shelf, right? It'll take a little bit more time to get going because it's custom, but ask if I see you have this audience, but what if I had this audience? What if you tweaked it slightly? What if you overlaid my best customers to visitation data? How do we actually put that together in a way that's meaningful? And I think if you're dealing with, a company like ours that is analytics driven, we're going to be interested in that opportunity. And then if it works, right, you're going to keep replicating it. Everybody wins. If it doesn't, well, we all learn something. So I think it's really that collaboration and viewing it less as a vendor customer relationship and more as a partnership.
Mm-hmm. This is the time of the year. Usually the beginning of February is the switch over to summer blend fuel. And so next we try to communicate as much as possible about all the issues that are involved in that transition. So right now I'm knee deep in looking at all kinds of government numbers on miles traveled. So when you talk about 2 trillion miles, I think there's 4 million miles of road in the U.S. and 3 million of those are paved. So there's still a million unpaved. But when you put all that together and you say 4 million miles and then 2 trillion that you have data on, that's an enormous amount of data. Now, the other thing I think a lot of people have, whether it's at the cash register, whether it's with their some sort of AI that they may have or anything else, there's so much data out there. What are opportunities to or ways to think about cutting through the data so it just doesn't become, I have so much data, I am paralyzed, I can't even think about what to do. What are some winning strategies to look at data and say, okay, we can do this and it doesn't overwhelm us?
Right. Yeah, I think the biggest mistake I've seen people make on the data side, purely on the data and analytics side, is everybody wants to see all the data. Mm-hmm. Right. And they don't specify what it is they're trying to solve for. Right. Is all you're trying to do try and understand what are the trends in mileage in my area? Well, okay, we can just answer that question. You don't need to look at data to see that. And that's kind of where Arity's kind of drawn that line. We sell insights, not data. Right. Mm-hmm. And so if we understand your problem, we can actually deliver insights against that. Right. We work with some gas station, fuel companies, and we help them understand the patterns, right, of what's happening in each individual market area. And they've defined the market areas. And we can tell you what the volumes of traffic are, what times of day did they shift, where is that traffic coming from right before, and where does that traffic originate at the start of the day, right? So we can give people those kinds of insights, and it's a lot more manageable, right? Because when you try and if you can imagine the amount of compute power it takes to process 1,500 trips a second when the file itself is recording signal at every 3 to 15 seconds, mm-hmm. plus all the accelerometer data and all of that, that would just blow out most people's budgets. You're never going to be able to process that or get any meaningful insights. So the key is lean into your analytics partner, right? And really have them boil it down for you and understand how to build the insights that you need, right? Make it custom, right? And that's where, if you have a good analytics partner, they're going to customize the insights for you to answer your challenges. We have other people who use the insights to do inventory planning, right? They're planning like how much inventory, how much staffing, right? Because the data is at a very detailed level, and so if you give us a question, we can usually answer it. Usually,
yes, and that's a nice, honest response. Yeah. So most of the country, there's certain areas of the country where it's nice all the time. I want to kind of wrap this up with a question, kind of giving some opportunities for people. There are a lot of areas of the country we start to see nationally this time of the year, driving starts to increase, and January's so low, it peaks in late July, early August when we get to summer drive and all those other things. So there's a lot of moments after the Super Bowl for people, whether it's retailers or folks who sell into the retail channel, to look for opportunities. Do you suggest that there are events, whether it's a 3-day weekend or some other thing, throw out something, Academy Awards, something like that? Or is it best to just say, look, let's have a real nice strategy. Let's roll it out when we're ready to roll it out. And maybe we stay away from some of those big events. Is there pros and cons to either one of those?
Yeah, I mean, obviously events impact traffic patterns, right? So, if Taylor Swift is running her is got a concert in your town, that's going to change traffic patterns dramatically, right? And so you need to understand how, as a business, that will impact traffic by your store, or be prepared for a surge, or be prepared to be completely abandoned. There were parts of town in Seattle during the All-Star game that nobody went to, right? And so those businesses should have been prepared. Don't staff up, right? But the ones who were going to get a lot of traffic, maybe they didn't need to actually spend a lot of money on marketing, right? Others who thought that maybe they were going to have less traffic during that time, maybe they do want to encourage people to come here because, hey, it's not so crowded. You can get your business done over on this side of town than that side of town. So a lot of the seasonal things, the kind of events based stuff, super interesting, but probably not going to make or break most companies. Most companies, you have to have that consistent strategy. What am I trying to achieve? How am I trying to get my day-to-day business to operate so that my total sales for the year are where I want them to be? Because you can't rely on events, right? You can rely on seasonal patterns, right? Like the summer drive season. It's a real thing. People do drive. But the thing is, they do different places. Yeah. They drive differently, right? They're getting up on highways. They're going long distances. The average American is not driving a long distance, right? The average American drives pretty short distances, right? If someone's driving more than 20 miles a day, that's usually kind of strange, right? Most people are just kind of popping over to the office if they're working, in an office still, and coming home. Their commutes are relatively short. Or maybe they're dropping the kids and then coming home, right? So people don't really drive as much as we think they do. And they're also not driving on the highways. They're driving on local streets. And that's an advantage that we have with our mobility data, is we're covering all the roads. We're not just covering highways, right? We cover the highways, but that's not everything we do.
So thanks for joining us, Fred. We talked a little bit about the Super Bowl, but this is really about how do you drive a strategy to communicate to people on the road. And that's perfect for convenience stores, because a lot of people that come in convenience stores are coming there because it's a simple right-hand turn, easy in, easy out, on your way, solve a problem. So thanks for your insights and taking us through what some of the opportunities are and how you can build out things and do it thoughtfully and make a difference in growing your sales. So, Fred, thanks again for joining us.
Thanks, Jeff. It was a pleasure.
And thank you all for listening to Convenience Matters.
Convenience Matters is brought to you by NACS and produced in partnership with Human Factor. For more information, visit convenience.org.